Welcome back. Now, the oil prices at the mercy of Middle East tensions. In the meantime, Africa's oil production has dropped significantly over the last 10 years due to instability in parts of the continent, coupled with challenges around securing financing for oil exploration and production. Now, in its 30th year, Africa Oil Week has kicked off, and a key focus at this year's conference includes tackling issues key to financing the continent's upstream oil and gas sector. At the event, William Breeze, partner at Herbert Smith Freehills, heads a panel with this particular focus. He joins me with a greater perspective. Thank you so much for your time, William. There's lots of terminology that does go on around the sector. Now, here when we talk about African upstream in the oil and gas sector, what do we actually mean? What are the pillars there, and really what part of the supply chain are we looking at?
So, first of all, thank you very much for having me. It's great to be here and great to be back in Cape Town for Africa Oil Week. The upstream is getting the oil and gas out of the ground. It's not when you see it at your petrol pump. It's not when you're piping it along. It's finding the stuff in the ground and getting it out, then to be refined and used by consumers and industry.
And I would imagine actually that may be the part of the supply chain that requires most of the capital. Let's actually talk about that. Is there enough investor appetite for this kind of investment? And particularly as we're looking at the conversation around the world moving away from fossil fuels?
It's a really good question. The short answer is yes, there still is enough capital available. Obviously, always more is wanted, but through a combination of governments, export credit agencies, commercial banks, various financial institutions, particularly in Africa, corporate investors, commodity trading houses, there's a range of sources. And as things stand, there's plenty of capital, although, of course, more is wanted.
Plenty of capital that is available, more wanted, but is it actually finding its way to where it needs to be on the continent?
Broadly speaking, yes. A regulatory environment that encourages and supports investment and gives certainty as to recovery on investment is absolutely essential. And that sort of certainty in a regulatory legal framework is key for investors. I'm talking not just about equity investors, so the companies, whether international or African, that are the ones doing the exploration and the production, but also the various institutions that are bringing capital to play, say the banks,
Yes.
the export credit agencies, the development finance institutions that I mentioned before.
Yeah.
It is really important to have that secure environment, and I think it's fair to say those countries, those jurisdictions with a perceived more robust environment will encourage more capital flows towards themselves.
And it's actually quite interesting because on Friday I was having a conversation with an economist about Uganda now wanting to take part in oil production. And I was actually wondering why now. But of course, you do say that there is still demand. But I'm wondering how much of a piece of the pie can Africa actually have in, the upstream market of the oil and gas sector at this point?
Demand is still there and it's still going up, not as much as in previous years, but there's still more than 100 barrels a day of oil required. So I think Africa's got real scope to have a more meaningful slice of the pie than is currently the case. And it comes down to an ability to get that oil out of the ground at not too high a cost and then bring it to market safely. And I think Africa's got a fantastic opportunity, looking particularly at some recent finds, and Namibia springs to mind there. Hugely promising finds there. Yes, I think Africa's future is bright on that.
Well, I mean, just looking at also what is happening in the world, because there's lots of upside risk when it comes to geopolitical tensions. And of course, we have seen the impact of that on the oil market and, of course, particularly on supply. Do you think that Africa does have a good opportunity to kind of take advantage of a crisis? As we say, don't let a good crisis go to waste.
Yes, sad though it is, of course, this crisis is driving higher oil prices. Higher oil prices means greater need for production, and that's going to drive capital and investment towards African opportunities. So yes, I think that there is an opportunity here very much for Africa to seek to realize its hydrocarbons opportunities.
Well, I mean, and talking about, just the, investor supply of capital meeting with the demand that we have here in Africa, are there innovative financing models that can facilitate a smoother meeting of that capital supply and demand?
Absolutely. So we've seen some really creative financing structures used. I better not name names about the transactions in question, but there was one in West Africa that we helped with, which had a very complicated capital structure, very innovatively put together, and a very successful acquisition by an indigenous company, a real flagship for how that sort of investment can be affected. So yeah, I think we're seeing creativity and innovation, and it's proving really successful.
All right. So we're looking forward to more of the engagements that do come out of Africa Oil. We thank you so much for your time and for your insights today, William. Do enjoy the rest of the summit conference, the engagements. That was partner at Herbert Smith Freehills, William Breeze.